Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Greatness Engineering Hour. And as usual, today we're going to have a fascinating conversation with another champion. And I know that you're going to like it because it's something that actually touched every single one of us. So it's going to be very interesting to understand and it's gonna be around the subject of leadership and also teamwork collaboration. So I encourage you to make sure that you have a pen and you also have a notebook so you can take notes and learn from my guest today. And the most important thing, yes, you're gonna have all this knowledge. It's gonna be shared to you, but the most important part is going to be for you to implement this knowledge and to take massive action. And don't stop at this level. Share the knowledge as well, so that somebody else who actually couldn't make it today, or somebody that you feel like need this knowledge, can use it as well, and use it to go to the next level of its knowledge and the next level of its greatness. So, who is our guest today? So, our guest today is I hope I'm not gonna say the name, but I'm gonna say the name very well. So, there's Csaba and Toth, and is the founder of ICQ Global, and he developed a multi-award winning global disc model, and we're going to learn a lot. We're going to learn a little bit more from it today, and is also the author of the Amazon bestseller Uncommon Sense in Unusual Times. So it's a very I've not had the opportunity to read the full book, but just to have an idea of what it's all about. But we'll learn a little bit more about it today. So get ready. Don't go anywhere, and I'm gonna bring our guest now. And like I said, share, like, start, and watch parties, and you'll be able to really make an impact as well on your side, because I make sure that I bring the best. I make sure that I bring the champion. I make sure that I bring people who are engineering greatness in their own community or in their own environment, and I want you to do the same. So let's start. Don't go anywhere, and we're gonna have an amazing conversation with Csaba today.
Is it live now?
Is it all right? Okay, okay, let's get started right into it. And that is the power of labels, right?
On memories. But as I got older, I started to be more aware of some of the abusive sides of
So welcome, welcome, Taba, to the Greatness Engineering Hour show. It's a great pleasure to host you today and to learn a little bit about, your blueprint and all the amazing work that you've been doing to, to help us understand how we collaborate and understand, how we come across, especially, when we interact with others. So before we go into, deeper into this subject, just want you to introduce yourself and let us know, who you are and what you've been doing, and really understand how you came to do what you do now.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this opportunity. My story is, I don't know if it's almost like a hero story, but not in a good way, because most people don't do anything until it hurts enough, and I was the same. Because
Mm-hmm.
often we don't realize that something is damaging us, or the relationships. We don't realize how much time and energy and how many opportunities we waste, despite
Mm-hmm.
our best intention and common sense. And that's the reason why I started my company. I grew up in Hungary in a small village, and that was the kind of environment where I didn't have too many challenges in terms of culture or personal differences. I didn't know what to do, so I studied Italian linguistics. I got a master's in it, and as soon as I finished, I came to the UK for a summer, but that was 16 years ago, and I'm still here. And after 3 years, I went to uni again, and I got a master's in international management. And this is where I found this topic, because my dissertation was about understanding how different the Hungarian managers were from the Western Europeans. And the research revealed that the gap between the two generations in Hungary was much bigger than the gap between the new generation and the Western Europeans, which didn't make sense at all, because all
Yeah.
the academics claim that culture is country specific and stable. I said, no, look
Mm-hmm.
at the numbers. That's not true at all. But who are you to question the people who've been around for 40, 50 years? That's not polite. So I forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I finished, I started my own company, which was a restaurant booking site. You book a table, we get the money. That's the business model, but it was much more exciting than that. So we started with 35 restaurants here in Brighton. And in 1 year, we had 5,500 all over the UK. And it became a joint venture with a software company. On paper, everything made sense. We were getting the results, but on a personal level, I couldn't stand the French CEO. We just couldn't work together. And we got to the point where we had to get out of the business. It's still online. But that's when I started my research. I didn't understand how come that was the exact topic of my dissertation. That
Mm-hmm.
department itself is #1 in the world in its category. I had years of experience, but I couldn't put that theory into practice. That didn't make sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to understand what went wrong and how I could fix it. So I got certified in a lot of different things, because my assumption was that if all of those models are or were correct, there must be a huge overlapping part. And that's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking for, the blueprint of why people think and behave differently. And the result of that is a framework called Global Disc, which is now an ICF accredited model. We have licensed partners in 31 countries. We work with some Fortune 500 companies, the government in New Zealand, and some other businesses as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I call the science of uncommon sense.
The science of uncommon sense. So yes, so a lot of work, you've done a lot of work, but as you said, it was based on what you've seen on the basically in your life, in your journey. And that's important to know, is that it's not something that you've just made up. You've
No.
really, done the research, you've lived it yourself, and you came up with this model. But what is this? Obviously, you talked a little, you started to touch a bit about it, but what did you look into? Into to come up with that? How did you structure your research, and what are the key thing that actually went into creating the model that you have
Okay.
right now, this model that you've just mentioned?
Well, understanding people is not easy, and there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of different ideas around it. So that's a typical question. What is more important, your personality type or your culture background?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of misconceptions about these topics, Because when you talk about your personality type, there are a lot of psychometric and behavioral models like DISC, MBTI, Insights Discovery. They focus on how the different personality types tend to behave if they are not influenced by anything or anyone around them, which is pretty impossible because you can put different people in a team and they are going to conform to certain norms. And on the other side, you have the intercultural models, which are technically international models because they focus on one cultural group out of the 15 or 20 we belong to, and that's their country of origin. So if you look at research, more than 80% of cultural differences exist within countries, not between them. At least 70% of the people in a country are significantly different to what is normal around them. And this is the problem. But when you find courses promising you that I teach you how to manage Americans, well, you don't know that. You have no idea. What is normal in terms of managing groups in the US, that would be a much more accurate statement. But how to manage a nationality, we don't know. Culture is not who we are. It's what we are used to. There's a big difference there. So if you look at different research where they compare 17 different culture groups in terms of practicality and range of differences, then the bottom three were the country of origin, gender, and generation. The biggest range of differences. Yet, how many coaches exist and they claim that they are experts in millennials? Experts in millennials, in 1.2 billion people. How can you be an expert in that? How practical is that? But at the same time, it's logical because you don't choose your gender, your generation, or country of origin. But even if you are completely different, you learn how to navigate efficiently in that environment because we want to feel approved. We conform to norms, even if they're completely different to what's natural to us. But when you choose your culture group, like your profession, your hobbies, then ideally you choose the ones that are the closest one to your natural preferences. So when you talk about, for example, engineers in different countries, deep inside on a cognitive level, in terms of values and beliefs, probably they are much more close to each other than random people from one country. So instead of pointing out statistically average national differences to widen the gap, let's find a common ground. And then we can learn how to make the most of our differences, not the other way around.
Exactly. And we've been doing the other way around is really, basically force people to get into a certain box. And it's either cultural, it's either racial, it's either because a religion or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's been actually harming a lot of people, a lot of organizations, and a lot of community as well. And we've seen it recently with what's going on in the US with the Black Lives Matter and everything. And like you said, it's not because you are from the same country that you basically have the same values as well, so you can be as different as somebody living, for example, here in Australia, or living in Europe, or living in Africa, or as close as you can from somebody who is living miles away from where you are. So, but I mean, how did you see it impacting particularly corporate? Because I think that's one of the key area where we always hear people talking about diversity and inclusiveness, gender equality, and so how do you use this blueprint and this model to make really this diversity work for organization? Because you mentioned just before we started this collaboration or partnership that you had with this French businessman, and it didn't work. But yet, you realize later, down the road, that there were different factors that you had to take into account for to get into it. So how did you see, the corporate world responding to that?
Well, I think you're completely right that when you talk about countries, it doesn't mean that everybody shares the values. And for example, the Black Lives Matter is just another example. I mean, the countries are divided, not just the US, but most of the countries are really, really divided. And those people are not even similar. And here's the problem, that you could give an assessment to each member of that group or the country, get back the results, get a statistically average score, but that wouldn't represent the country. That wouldn't be practical. But often people, when they see a number, they think it's, ooh, that's scientific. That must be real. Well, maybe it's real, but is it practical? Can you use it on a personal level? Because if you look at the US or UK or a lot of countries, it's more like they have 2 or 3 different personality types with often completely opposing preferences. And maybe one of them is slightly stronger than the other one, but they're not really similar. That's what I meant by culture is what we are used to, not who we are. And that's a good thing that now a lot of people focus on diversity and inclusion. But here's the problem, that they focus on the visible layer of diversity. So I mentioned that the bottom 3 out of all the cultural groups were country of origin, gender, generation. And surprisingly, these are the cultural groups that most companies focus on when they want to increase diversity.
Exactly.
Because often it's more like a PR trick, a marketing tool, and they don't really understand the power of it. Diversity is the greatest potential for success or disaster. It depends on how much we understand ourselves or others. And for many people, diversity and inclusion are the same. So when the clients approach us and they say, oh, we want to increase diversity, they are surprised when I say, please don't. They say, well, what do you mean don't? That's politically incorrect. I said, no, it's not. Aim for inclusion first. And diversity is going to increase as well. But not the other way around. If you try to increase diversity without understanding the topic, without having psychological safety in an inclusive environment, you're asking for trouble, a lot of trouble. There's a problem with that. Diversity is just the existence of differences. But what's the point in getting a lot of different people, putting them in a team, and then teaching them how to be normal? They call it onboarding. But,
yeah, exactly.
But then you can take a picture, it looks good on the website. But if you look at the research, the only layer of diversity that has proven benefit is cognitive diversity. And when I say that, sometimes people misunderstand it and they think, oh, for you, the visible layer of diversity is not important. You don't care about women and minorities. I say, no, that's the exact opposite. I'm talking about it because it matters. Imagine that you buy a laptop because you want to use the internet. And then you don't know how to connect to the Wi-Fi. You don't know Wi-Fi exists. And you might think, you know what, this laptop doesn't work. Well, that wasn't the problem. And there's the same with the diversity. If you don't understand cognitive diversity, then we're not going to make it work. And those people might come to the wrong conclusion that diversity is not good. And that's not true. If they rely on common sense and good intention, then there's a problem. It's going to backfire. Definitely. But if you think about homophilic diversity, it sounds like a disease, but it's not. It just means that we like and trust people who are like us.
Exactly.
So I can show you case studies proving that often an international team, a really colorful team, is much more homogeneous inside than a random local team. Just think about it. You have to hire somebody. Why would you employ a person who disagrees with you? Why would you employ a person who annoys you? You don't need that hassle. You have enough stress in your life. So we are going to get someone who is like us inside. They look different, but deep inside, there you go. They are similar. This is what we like and trust. But here's the problem. For marketing, it's fantastic. But if you look at performance, then and you want to create greatness, it's not going to happen because you have the same tunnel vision as a team, just like as an individual. You have, imagine, you have a meeting, 10 people, very colorful, but everybody's like you inside. You make a decision. Everybody agrees with you. There's so much energy. So it feels right. It doesn't make it true at all. And here's the uncommon mindset, that you are able to see the same situation from different perspectives so you can make a better decision. And then you can choose to respond instead of just reacting. That's the goal. It's not about statistically average national differences. It's about being able to see the same situation from different perspectives. It's about cognitive and behavioral flexibility. That's our topic.
And I like it. I like it because sometimes we basically work on trends. It's like, okay, it's the trend, so that's what we're gonna do. It's the trend to have diversity, so people start to put people together without looking at what's gonna be the impact. Is it the right things to do in the context where we are, but we have to respond to the trend. That's what's, that's what's happening. And then we end up, going to a disaster. And we can see it in a lot of, a lot of organizations, and a lot of, communities as well, where it just lead to disaster. And we don't and we start to scratch our head and don't really understand, but yet, we're just following a trend just to follow, or because it's the, it's the thing to do for the moment. But is it the right thing? That's another story. So we're gonna take a break, and I have few people here. So there's Dee, she's watching from Washington DC. And then there's also Adelina. Adelina is watching as well with us. So we'll have a break, have a video, and then we'll come back and continue this fascinating conversation. And I'm pretty sure, you all learn a lot like I do, because, sometimes we think that we have the right knowledge, but when we see another perspective, we understand that we still have a long way to go. So don't go anywhere. We are back pretty soon. So we are back. We are back with Csaba, and we are already, being enlightened on a lot of, of the point, especially on leadership and also on diversity and inclusiveness. And one question that I wanted to ask you, Csaba, is, what is the global, DISC program, and what are the tools and strategy that you use to implement this blueprint, in organization or in communities, or can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, when I did my research, I wanted to understand how come people don't use the knowledge or the models or frameworks, or how come they're not getting the results that the models are promising. Whose fault is that, or whose responsibility? So it's not about blaming anyone. It's just about finding an even better solution. And this is when I had to realize that it doesn't matter how good something is. If it's too complex, people are not going to use it, most of them. So it's not going to make a difference. On the other hand, information rarely leads to transformation. And that's a problem. So, all the information is available now online. That's not the problem. But
Mhm.
how can you connect those dots? How can you make the topic as uncomplicated and practical as possible? And this is where global disc is important. Because
Mhm.
if you look at the visible layer of diversity, it's insanely complex. I mean, how can you be an expert in 200 countries and generations, genders, professions, all those things, and the combination of those, even if the numbers were correct and not last century? It's insanely complex. But if you look at the cognitive level,
Mhm.
then there are a very limited number of values and psychological needs, really limited number. Now, the behaviors, the habits, the best practices we use to meet those needs and express those values, that's insanely complex.
Mhm.
But there are limited number of levers beneath the surface, and Global Disc is the blueprint to do that.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't take away the uniqueness of people. I don't know you, but we are all predictably different. There is a
Mhm.
blueprint of why we think and behave differently. And once we understand this, and once we realize that we are all a combination of the 4 personality types, but we were conditioned differently by our environment, then it's much easier to manage the topic. It's much more
Mhm.
friendly and practical.
Mhm.
Because at the same time, we also have much more experience than we realize. You know, I
Mhm.
mentioned in the beginning that more than 80% of cultural differences exist within countries, not between them.
Mhm.
But the language makes a big difference, because let's say that you had a massive argument with your kids, and then you just
Mhm.
couldn't believe that you were talking about the same thing because their perspective was so different. Well, yes,
Mhm.
because these are all around us, these cultural differences. But we label them differently, because when you
Mhm.
clash with someone in your own family, you might call it personal differences. But if
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
exact same situation happens with someone from a different country, we might label it cultural differences. On the
Mhm. Mhm.
cognitive level, you talk about exactly the same thing. And
Mhm.
that's the reason why we talk about cultural differences as clashes of common senses,
Mhm.
because then you
Mhm.
can remove this illusion of separation, illusion of superiority, and you can
Mhm.
replace it with the power of curiosity and synergy.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
when we have a disagreement and I know I'm right, then the default position is that I know that you are wrong. It's
Mhm.
obvious. So if there's no trust and psychological safety between you and me, then we are going to put all that energy into convincing the other person that we are right and they are not. We win and you lose.
Mhm.
That's not
Mhm.
ideal. But if we have the uncommon mindset, then I know that you say that you're right because you think you're right. So I can ask you,
Mhm.
so what do you see that I don't? What can you see? What do you know that I don't? If you are able to do this, then diversity can lead to innovation.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
If
Mhm.
we cannot, then it turns into painful liability. And that's the reason why we have to focus on cognitive diversity. Because
Mhm.
diversity is pretty cool until somebody disagrees with us. After that, it's not.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
After that,
Yeah.
we don't like it, because it's
Mhm.
almost
Mhm.
like an attack on our identity. And if you're not confident enough, you don't know who you are, what you stand for, then you have to protect your ego at all costs. And
Mhm.
most people want to be right instead of learning about the truth
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
learning more. And I think this is what we can experience right now, that these differences were suppressed so much with the overdone political correctness that people couldn't ask a question without being scared that maybe the other person gets offended.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
even just simple question, where are you from? I can't even ask you anymore, because what if somebody gets offended? But if I cannot ask a question, I can only assume the answer. And
Mhm.
because we have negativity bias, at least 70% of our thoughts are negative, then we come up with something negative. And then I'm going to share it with my friends. You know, obviously they are like me. We
Mhm.
discuss it. So if I can hear it from them as well, then I accept it as truth. So
Mhm.
slowly we are just widening this gap. And that's a problem. And I think what we are experiencing now is almost like a reset, that all of those things are on the surface. It's ugly,
Mhm.
but at least we can deal with them. And
Mhm.
at the same time, we can see so many inspiring stories as well. Unfortunately, the news is about, horror stories, but there's always a balance. So many positive examples. So I'm just really hoping that this is the time now when we can facilitate a conversation. But
Mhm.
for that, we have to give people this blueprint. We have to give them the vocabulary. And the reason is that 95% of actions are driven by values and beliefs we are not even
Mhm.
aware of. 95, we are running on autopilot. So we can talk about the symptoms of the problem, but not the root cause. And it doesn't matter how much we reflect on these things. It doesn't matter how much you reflect on how to say good night in Russian if you don't speak Russian. It just doesn't matter. We need to learn about this, and then we can go deeper, not until then. So that's the goal.
And that's a challenge, isn't it? Because like you said, we are conditioned from basically day one. I mean, there's, we're born, and then, our parents, we get values and from belief from our parents, and then we go to school, and then the school again model us again. And by the time we realize, then you have all those media, and then all those organization, political and whatever you can think about. So it becomes really difficult to be, to understand who we are and what we stand for, and really be strong, on that, because we get basically I mean, we drain, we drain into all of this, and we don't even realize what's true anymore, what's the truth, and what's not, really relevant. And so I'm really curious to know, how successful you are to reset people and to reset organizations, to really go back basically to the basic, and then get this new knowledge that you're bringing to help them to refine, to find again who they are and really live their truth, because that's what it's all about.
Well, I've got a way of doing that, but it's kind of controversial, my advice, because usually I tell people that if you care about someone, then you hurt them, at least a little bit. And I'm not talking about abusement or anything like that. It's just talking about building more awareness, because often people don't know that they have a problem, and they don't know how serious it is, because they just accept it as normal. Have you seen the Febreze case study? You know, that odor neutralizer?
No.
So that's like a spray that doesn't mask the odor, but it neutralizes it. So when they discovered it, then they thought, you know what, our target market is the people with dogs, because those houses stink. So they went to those houses and they asked the owner, look, this is what we have, do you need it? And then the owner said, no, we don't. Why are you asking me? And just people couldn't understand what the hell is going on. Your house stinks and you don't need it. What do you mean? What's going on? And when they looked into this topic, they realized that there's a concept called, they went nose blind. They got used to it so much that they don't notice it anymore. And this is what most people do. They just accept that in a corporate environment, the staff turnover is high. That's normal. Their conclusion is they are not good enough, they are weak, something is wrong with them. Usually they don't think about leadership. It's always somebody else's problem. Because it's so much easier to criticize others than it is to take responsibility for our own actions and growth. That's not pretty. Personal and leadership development doesn't feel good. It's like a slap in the face. So it's easier to criticize other people. So this is the method, that when we go in, we have to show people with numbers that, look, this is the research. You put really, really smart people in a team, and you lose on average 79% of the potential. Do you think that's a good business model? Because maybe your competition is not like that. Maybe they understand it. Because 90% of business is interaction between people who think and behave differently. And we can help you unlock that by giving you the blueprint. But probably they don't know about it. So we have to support it. We have to increase the awareness so it hurts enough so they take action. So technically, this is about understanding that the highest level of growth is probably when you stop wasting your potential. You stop wasting time and energy and opportunities for two main reasons. One is friction with people who think and behave differently, and the other one is friction with ourselves, sabotage. And that's one of the biggest problems.
And those are the key thing that they are very difficult to actually realize, when, like you said, when you're used to do things and you think that, every single problem is because of others, or because of the environment, or because of, where you come from, then you forget to look at things from this angle and say, okay, I'm not sabotaging myself, or, and I'm not sabotaging other people. and that can be a big problem, which leads me to to ask you, because obviously when people realize what they stand for and what they really want to do you think that then collaboration becomes really a key part of making things work, either at the corporate level or at the at any level in our life?
I think it's really important, and there is a missing step. And I think this is exactly what you kind of phrased, that if you know who you are, what you stand for, and you are even okay with it, you accept yourself, then you don't have to bully anyone to feel important. Then you don't have to hide to feel safe. And to me, self-inclusion is the missing step, because there's so much noise about diversity and inclusion that, diversity is when you're invited to a party and inclusion is when you're asked to dance, which sounds beautiful, but it's incomplete. Because if that happens, and let's say you invite me and you ask me to dance, I'm going to tell you politely, no, thank you. And it's not your fault, it's mine. Because I would feel awkward because I don't have confidence in that topic. So the outcome is still negative. And this is what most people don't focus on. Look at low self-esteem. That's a real problem nowadays. When we compare other people's highlights with how we feel inside, we don't know how to talk about feelings and emotions. We don't understand this blueprint. We don't have close friends, just superficial ones, and we have to pretend to be someone else. So we stay in our head without the right knowledge. And that's a problem. How can you be inclusive towards others if you cannot accept yourself? I mean, in a healthy way, because I know quite a lot of people who can accept others. Indeed, they need them, because the more people need you and the more people like you, the higher your self-esteem goes. But that's a really fragile place. And here's the problem, that we cannot control the external environment. We can control only three things, nothing else. One is what we pay attention to. Second, what meaning we attach to it. And the third one is what action we take. That is it. And that's all in our mindset, not on the outside. But this is what most people don't know. Not because they are not good enough. It's because they don't teach this in schools. And to me, this is the big picture. I want this to be part of the syllabus. Because this shouldn't be the privilege of the corporate training. That would be a really different world if we could do that. Really different one. Once you understand that cultural differences are clashes of common senses, asking somebody to have common sense is selfish and naive. How could I expect you to come to the same conclusion if you have a completely different set of values, beliefs, and needs, completely different experience? That doesn't make sense. Golden rule sounds good. Treat people the way you want to be treated from a maybe ethical perspective. Be nice to people, yes. But believing that just because something drives me, it doesn't mean it's motivating for you. Maybe it's the exact opposite. And that's the reason why common sense and good intention can majestically backfire.
Wow. So that's a very powerful conversation. And we got to take another break, and we come back and continue to dig, a little bit deeper into your research and especially understanding, what this blueprint, the global disc is all about, but also how it can actually help us, as individuals and also as organization and communities to go to the next level of our greatness, because that's what, this show is all about. Really bring this knowledge and tools and strategies that can actually help us to really, understand that, we can use, our gift and in collaboration with others to bring, greatness back on the, on stage for everybody. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be back in few minutes. So we are back. We are back with Csaba. I hope you're enjoying the conversation that we are having, because it's really, something of, that I don't think everybody is used to, and great knowledge and great insight that we're having today. So, Csaba, one question that, I have, because obviously there's a lot of disruption happening right now. We live in what they call VUCA world. So how do you think this blueprint can, actually help us to not only manage the current, situation, but, move forward as far as, our industries, economies, and even social or humanity is concerned?
Knowing the blueprint is important because it helps with the self-awareness. But
Mm-hmm.
a tool is not going to change the world. That's a good idea and it's very practical, but that's not exactly the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is going to happen without the right mindset. If people don't know what is the benefit of using that tool and what is the cost of ignoring it, then they're not going to use it, and there's no transformation. And that goes back to making people cry a little bit, or at least just to create that kind of awareness that they know why they need it. So if you look at the current environment now, there's so much uncertainty. Everything is falling apart around us, and people are craving certainty, which is weird, which doesn't make sense, because safety and certainty don't exist in nature. That's an illusion, yet we are craving it. But the problem is that most people don't know themselves. They don't have that kind of self-awareness, so they cannot trust themselves. The jobs are disappearing. People are different around us. So they really need some kind of certainty. So where do they find that? Often in the national identity. Because that is strong, that's what they can see, it's tangible. I grab the flag, I love it, I hug it, whoa, we all same tribe and the same country. So we minimize the differences within that group and maximize it between groups, because there's nothing else that we can hang on to. And that's why we can see that the right wing is rising now, because it's natural, we can see it, and people are looking for the authority figures. And that's why we can see that that type of leadership is on the rise as well. But once we understand that there is no aggression without fear, and we know that those people are panicking, the ones who pretend to be tough with the gun, and that, no, actually, you guys are scared. Because there's nothing around you that you can trust. So you hang on to those people. But the problem is that those politicians and leaders took advantage of real problems and real people without offering a real solution, promising anything, even turning back time. It's not just one country, quite a lot of them. They promise anything just to grab that power. So to me, that's the real problem. That you can't do that when people are confident, when they know who they are, when they are not fighting. If you divide them, you label the different groups so they can fight each other, then they become weaker and it's easier to control them. So the more labels you have, the more divided people become, and the easier it is to control them. And to me, this is fascinating when I see what's happening, in politics, in sales and marketing. The underlying concept is exactly the same. The more you understand the mindset, the more successful you become. And this is the key, that learning is emotional. It's intense. The more intense an emotion is, the more the knowledge or that kind of experience stuck with you in the past. That's it. So when you scare people, immigrants are coming, the world is collapsing, people are scared, fear is the strongest emotion. Whatever I say gets imprinted on your mind, and it stays there. And then on the other side, they try to convince you, they try to influence you. Yeah, according to the statistics, blah, 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 blah. That's not emotional. Nothing goes in. And you can see it. Nothing goes in. We are still emotional. And if learning is emotional and you try to use the neocortex, facts and figures, we can see the result of that. When you're in survival mode, you don't have to be inclusive. You don't have to be nice. You don't have to be smart. You have to be strong and you have to be quick. And this is what we can see now. That's not an
Yeah.
inclusive environment. So the more labels we hand out, and the more people attach their identity to that label, that I'm a vegetarian, I'm a Christian, I'm a transgender, it doesn't matter what. If that's your identity and the only identity or the strongest one, then you have to protect it at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dangerous. And I think politicians know that exactly.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. And it's a real jungle, isn't it? And that's what it is that, you the stronger actually wins, because like you said, we're now really, playing in our instinct.
Yeah.
We are always defensive, and because of fear, because of, the lack of confidence that we have, and also the divisive, environment that's been created around us without us realizing that, we've been actually drawn into it, and we need to do something about it, and that's the difficult part, because when you start to, and that's what I was asking before, how do you deprogram people? Because it's actually kind of a program that's been running, for years in our lives, and we've been running this program on and on. And now, somebody comes and say, okay, no, that's the wrong program, you have to get rid of it and start fresh and bring something new. It's really challenging. It's really challenging. It's even scary for people,
Yeah.
because you so especially if you believe only on something really material, and you don't really look at the mindset or the spiritual, whatever we call it. Then for you is about, I'm going to lose everything, but I don't know what I'm going to gain, because you're not confident, and you lack self-esteem, and you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really a key thing. Well, what's a fascinating, fascinating subject, and I'm really, really curious, and to know, and to get, to read the book, because now that I've been able to have a little bit of insight from you, it would be really interesting to have that. So, I mean, where can we find your book, and let us know where we can find it, where we can get it, and also how people can get in contact with you, because that's the most important thing, because I know that's this research, the result of your research, is something that we definitely need to spread, because I don't think a lot of people are aware of what you've just shared today.
Yeah. And the book is, I published the book not to tell people what to think, but just to make them think and help them think, so they can question the status quo for the right reasons. And I would never tell people that their programming is not good enough or they are wrong, because when you tell people to change, then it implies that they are not good
Resistant.
enough. And nobody likes that. But if you tell them that, you're awesome already, but you can be even better, or we can help you unlock that potential, that's a much more friendly way of approaching the things. To me, that's the most important part, because often we try to protect the status quo. We try to protect something by denying evolution, by denying that the world is changing around us. So the intention is good, but it backfires. How many people think that, oh, it's my heritage, I have to protect it, I can't change anything? But it's a problem, because the world is changing around you. So the gap between what you try to protect and the world is getting bigger until you get to that breaking point. And as you have no other option anymore. So by denying reality, you are ultimately endangering the very thing that you try to protect. If you really love something, you look after it, you nurture it, you help it evolve. So the question is there an even better way of doing things? Because if that's how you ask the question, not saying that, oh, you have a wrong programming, because that program used to serve you, but the context, the world changed completely. So is there an even better way of doing that? And that's the reason why I published that book, because it asks the right questions. If you tell people that something is wrong or not good enough, they shut down. But if you ask the right questions and they have to come up with the answer, it's much more impactful. So that book is available on Amazon and all the major websites as well. And it's also a hybrid book, meaning that it's not just a book, because information rarely leads to transformation. So it's seamlessly integrated with an interactive coaching platform, meaning that you read a chapter and you can also experience it. And join a Facebook group where you can share this journey with people who are on the same mission. Otherwise, we just revert back to our habits. If you stay in your own environment, that's not easy. It's not easy to change, because people are going to try to pull you back, even if they love you. Because if you just highlight the gap between who they are and on which level they are and where they could be, like you, they're going to pull you back. Oh, no, you don't need another course. Stop working hard. Just have a rest. Intention is good. But if you know how these things work, then it's easier to manage them. And we don't get defensive. And if somebody wants to connect, then probably the best option is LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with everyone on LinkedIn. We are in the same team. If somebody has a different solution, a different path leading towards the same destination, fantastic. I believe in creating synergy rather than competing.
And that's the challenge we have right now, because there's, the competition has been promoted to such a level that it becomes very difficult to tell people that, we, in a way, we're all connected and we need to synergize, we need to collaborate, we need to have partnerships, because we all going into, we all going to the same direction. So why compete? And why trying to bring other downs when we want to go up? We can all go up together and complement each other, because we all have different gifts. We all have different things that we can bring on the table, and then make this table complete. Because that's really the challenge of all of this. But like you said, things are changing. It's probably also the right time to start to think about, asking ourselves different questions. And that's where your book is coming, and understand, how we can, address those questions, and how we can adjust to be able to bring a solution to those questions that, an answer and a solution to those questions that we are asking ourselves, because it's really important to know that. So it has been a very interesting conversation, and very deep as well, because it's important that we bring this type of knowledge and this type of a conversation on the international platform, so people understand really what's going on, people understand how things are evolving, and understand that in a way it's actually quite simple. It's about understanding who we are, and be confident about it, and build up on it, to really collaborate, partner, and partner with other people, and to bring humanity to the next level, because that's what we are working on, and start to stay away from this divisive and negative environment that we've been drawn into, and to help us to go to the next level of our greatness. So before we leave, what is the last message that you want to leave the audience with? Because obviously you've been doing all this great work, and starting to share it, and really try to bring the right question to us, to understand how we can really develop ourselves, and really get to self-actualization in a way, by asking ourselves the right question. So what's next? And what's really the key thing that you want to leave us with today?
I mean, what you said is completely true, that this is simple, but also it's not easy. And that's why most people don't do that. So the main message is probably a question. Do you want to be right, or you want to find an even better solution? That would be my question, because a lot of people want to be right instead of learning about the truth and finding better ways. But the quality of your questions determine the quality of your life and relationships. And that's one thing that we see the world from our own perspective, and it makes sense. And all the algorithms of YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook, they all just reinforce that message, and they pump up our cognitive bubble where most things make sense, but that doesn't make it true. So try to see the same situation from different perspectives, because we don't know what is truth. This is what you mentioned in the very beginning. So instead of watching the same channels, watch another one that you cannot stand. That's why now sometimes I'm watching conspiracy theories, because it's so interesting to see that. I know that just because you watch the news, it doesn't mean it's true at all. And it doesn't mean that the other side is true, but there must be some truth in it. And I'm just interested in that perspective. But it can feel uncomfortable. But when you feel uncomfortable, that's a sign that you are growing. That's a very good sign. When you see that the frustration is the wrapping paper on the gift of learning, then you don't reject it anymore, thinking that it's pain, but you associate it with pleasure, because you know that you are growing. And it becomes a much more positive experience. That's the way forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Csaba, for your insight and great knowledge today, and for giving us some positivity here, because we really need it. And with what's going on right now, and like we just talk about, people trying to be very divisive and really bringing this ego thing on top of everything, and not letting us really express ourselves and become really what we're meant to become. And that's really refreshing to have those kind of conversation. And I know that the audience really enjoyed it. There's we have somebody saying loving this, and we have Ephraim is here in Perth, so creating synergy rather than competing. And is also saying very informative session, well done. So that's all for today. Unfortunately, 1 hour is probably not enough to talk about this subject. You will have to connect with Csaba to get more information and to get more knowledge. I know that his organization is doing a lot of workshops, and there are some certification if you want to go to the next level. And they really making sure that this information is getting to everybody. And any event that you have coming, or any training that you think will be of good use for us, Csaba.
Yes, the next one, and that's my absolute favorite, is the ICQ Growth Mindset course. At the end of August 24, it's 4 times 90 minutes, interactive, including the assessments and an amazing bunch of people. And the reason is that it's not just a slightly different version of the growth mindset concept. It's a very different take on it. Because if you think about it, most of the opportunities, time and energy are lost for 2 reasons. One is friction with people who think and behave differently, and 2, friction with ourselves, self-sabotage. So we're going to get into the details to address the 7 main challenges and what you can do about it. Because the highest level of growth is when you stop wasting your potential. There's no point in adding more techniques if you cannot unlearn the beliefs and the habits that are holding you back. The biggest distance between 2 people is misunderstanding, because we just see the other person's behavior and we just assume their intention, which might be completely different than what they meant. So we're going to get into the details. The people get the techniques, the strategies, and the insights, so they can unlock that amazing potential within and between people.
Fantastic. Very, very powerful. I hope you all got everything, because if you've not read it down everything, too bad, because you're really missing on something powerful today. So as far as I'm concerned, so for today, our conversation is we over with this conversation. But Wednesday we are having another show, and I hope you're gonna be here. And there are a few things happening also on my side. So there's the conference, the Global Supplier Diversity Conference, and it's going to be virtual this time, and it's going to be on the 24th of September. And so you can grab your complimentary registration by visiting the Global Supplier Diversity Conference.com. So don't hesitate to do that. And then there's the magazine as well that's been launched. So the Greatness Engineering magazine is on. So it was launched on the 23rd. That was my own birthday present. So hopefully you can catch up with some of the people who've been on the Greatness Engineering Hour show as they develop a little bit more the concept and ideas that they've shared with us on this platform. So that's good. Apart from that, again, a big thanks to Csaba for his time, inside knowledge, great knowledge, and inspiration as well. And I'm gonna, we're gonna, leave it there, and really, hope that everybody who's been here today will be able to, if they want to continue this conversation, to connect with Csaba directly, or if you want to go through me, that's not a problem. But please, share this knowledge, because it's really important. It's really deep, and you will not only help, humanity, but help yourself as well, because you're gonna create a ripple effect was gonna come back to you at some point as something very positive. So that's all for today. And so I'm going to say bye-bye to everybody, and bye-bye to Csaba as well. Have a great day, Csaba, and take care.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.